call the meeting to order and welcome everybody. You're all so quiet. Is there a reason? I don't know. Usually you have to say hi. Everybody wants to get out of here. Oh, it's cold. I don't know. Well, welcome everybody. The board did meet in closed session, and we have 3 reportable outcomes. The first one, pursuant to Government Code 54956.9, the Board of Trustees in closed session took action to accept the settlement offer from contractor Barnum and Solillo in the sum of $250,000 for additional electrical work and materials rendered by Barnum and Solillo in connection with the Tulare Center Ag and Technology, a state-funded project. The members voted 5-0 in favor. The next item, in closed session, this afternoon the board was informed there's a lack of uniformity in how non-vice president administrators are employed by the district. While the majority of these administrators, oh, you wanted to comment?
It's okay. You're kind of in the middle of the explanation.
All right, well, John did a good job. How non-vice president administrators are employed by the district, and while the majority of these administrators are employed in their positions pursuant to California Ed Code Section 72411, there are 2 administrators who are employed pursuant to an employment contract. Okay, Stan, I'll let you talk and I'll let you the vote.
So the short version of this item is that over the years, there's been 2 ways that non-vice president administrators, so deans, director level positions, have been employed, either in accordance with the education code, which is on an annual 1-year appointment, subject to annual evaluation and reappointment on a regular basis, or through a multi-year contract. It's been fairly common in institutions like ours for multi-year contracts to be reserved only for vice president positions and above, so vice president, president. It is allowable, although not that common, to have deans, for example, on 2-year contracts or multi-year contracts. It's been a matter of preference, I think, at COS over past presidents. So what we had over the last couple of years was a mixture of what was 2 presidents ago and then 1 president ago. And we had some deans on an annual appointment so that they were employed annually, and some on a multi-year contract, so they had a 2-year contract that would expire and need to be renewed. We made the decision a year ago to allow them all on their natural termination to expire and return everybody to being employed, if you're a dean, being employed, director, being employed in accordance with the education code on an annual appointment contract. And the last 2 positions to expire and now transition to an annual employment contract are the Dean of Human Resources and the Dean of Technology. So what you're seeing tonight are 2 transactions. One, to terminate, if you will, their multi-year contracts, which are set to expire June 30th. And the second action immediately is to reemploy them on the 1 year so that there isn't a period of time that somebody's not employed. There was for about 3 minutes in closed session. and then they were
nervous.
And then they were reappointed. So I don't want to say formality because it's a little more than that, but that's the end result of it. It's getting everybody employed in the same status.
Oh, there he is. He is in here. Okay, so in order to provide that uniformity throughout the district and how non-vice presidents are employed, the board elected 5-0 not to renew the employment contracts for both Dean of Human Resources and the Dean of Technology. Thus, both of these administrators' employment contracts will expire on June 30th, 2014. So that was a 5-0 vote. Next, the board voted 5-0 also in favor of, upon the expiration of these contracts on July 1st, 2014, both the Dean of Human Resources, Legal Affairs, and the Dean of Technology, the employment status will immediately convert to employment pursuant to Ed Code Section 72411.
And just for clarification, what does that mean? It simply means now that on an annual basis, in accordance with the education code, an administrator on the annual appointment cycle, if they were going to be non-reelected, changed, or reassigned at the end of that annual performance, they would need to be evaluated and properly notified of that change by March 15th of any year. So it's very similar to the other obligations we have to certificated and classified employees. It's just lining up administrators to be on the same cycle and treated in the same way.
Okay, thank you. Diana, will you lead us in the pledge?
Ready? Salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I would like to now turn the organizational meeting of the Board of Trustees over to President Carrizosa.
Okay, if you're familiar with the Education Code, our board and elected board has a responsibility each year at their December meeting prior to the end of an annual year to designate that meeting as, in part, as their organizational meeting of the Board of Trustees. What that means is, under the requirements in the Education Code, it's at the December board meeting that if there were newly elected board members, they would be sworn in and given their oath of office and seated. If there were board members who were, I don't want to say, whose terms were finishing, I was going to say if there's board members who expired. If there's board members whose terms were finishing, they would be recognized and honored and concluded at this meeting. This year, without an election, what we have is the remaining elements of the organizational meeting, which require the annual election of officers, so we'll have that tonight. It's also a time when we publish the schedule for regular board meetings for the upcoming calendar year, which is 2014. And one of the other technicalities we do this evening is we appoint the secretary and we authorize signatures. So those are the elements of the organizational meeting. It's kind of an awkward time if you've ever been an elected official, because board members have to elect officers from among themselves. They don't get the opportunity to talk about it in advance. They don't get the opportunity to discuss. If they're interested in serving as an officer, they have to share that interest here. If they're interested in supporting someone else as an officer, they have to share that interest here. Sometimes there's more than one person interested in one office, so there's an opportunity for conversation and dialogue. So to try and make it a little less awkward or as comfortable as can be, we start with the secretary of the board conducting the process to actually elect the board president for the coming year. Once the board president is elected, then that board president will mimic the steps that we did to elect them, and they'll be able to then conduct an election of the vice president and then follow up with an election of the clerk. There's a couple different ways. I was talking with board member Zumwalt before we got started that this can happen, but we're going to follow Robert's Rules of Order, and we're going to have the election take place by there being a formal motion made, and the motion is to nominate. You can nominate yourself if you'd like to for an office, or you can nominate a fellow board member. But when a nomination is made in the form of a motion, it needs a second. Once that nomination is seconded, then there's an opportunity for any further discussion, and then an actual vote on the officer is made by a call for the vote on that nomination. Before we start, though, the thing that I like to do, just if it helps at all, is to give board members the opportunity, maybe going down the line, if they have any interest in sharing whether or not they have an interest in holding a position for the coming year, whether or not they have an interest in supporting someone else for a position in the coming year. Rather than that be silent and there be kind of an awkward rush to make a motion and put a name in there and then wait for a second, we can have a little discussion ahead of time for any board members who would like to express their thoughts, feelings, concerns, or interests regarding either their willingness to serve in a position, if fellow board members would like or need to do that, or in supporting one of their fellow board members for a position. With that discussion out on the floor, once we reach a natural moment of silence, then I would call for a motion of nomination for the first office, which is president.
Secretary, I don't find this awkward at all. I think that amongst us, well, first all five of us could serve as board president and do a fine job. But in my opinion, amongst us, there's one individual who has the skill set and the experience that exceeds the rest of us. I have great confidence in Lori Cardoza being able to lead us for another year. If she did only as well as the last year, that would be terrific. I have every expectation she'd do much better than that. And I also have a belief that whoever the president is should select everybody else.
Any other comments, thoughts, input?
No, I certainly would support Lori. I think Lori did a great job last year. Tough year, too.
Yeah, I would support that as well. I thought John was going to say if she did as well as the last president, but
Well, the other thing about our protocol is by policy, we don't have any fixed rotation. We don't have any term limit. So it really is an open floor each year. There isn't the expectation that people take turns or that it's your turn this year. It really is based on what board members want and feel the board needs in the way of their collective leadership. So.
I also think it would be great to have a little continuity for president, so.
I appreciate the confidence my fellow board members have given me. I served to the best of my capacity anyways. I know last year's meeting at this time was a little more uncomfortable. We were in the big room, and I will say that I was a little overwhelmed, but I quickly, I guess, learned how to respond to that. I will say that my board members stepped up for me this year and backed me up when I needed backup. I do have 4 younger children who are busy and in school, and I won't lie that is my priority, and it always will be. But everybody stepped in when I called and asked. I think as long as I have their support, I'm more than happy to be president, but I definitely will lean and rely on my vice president especially, but all of them that have stepped up and helped me one way or another. So I appreciate that.
Okay, so any other discussion? If not, then I would open the floor for a motion for nomination for the office of president.
I nominate Lori Cardoza.
I will second.
There's a motion by Mr. Zumwalt, a second by board member Sherman. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Well, thank you, board members. I appreciate the confidence you're giving me again for another year. I can go over
So now you have the opportunity, Lori, to kind of repeat the steps for vice president and clerk.
Okay, well, speaking of continuity, I believe that we work well as a team and that the continuity should continue. So do any board members want to speak on behalf of vice president, or shall I make a nomination? I nominate John Zumwalt, vice president, for another year.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. No, just
No, it's not.
okay, sorry. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, John, congratulations. You'll be backing me up, especially come May. I told you May's going to be a month where John may have to take over. Okay, we'll move on to election of board clerk. I'd like to nominate Earl Manigan. Have a second?
Second.
I'll make a motion to nominate Earl. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Congratulations, Earl. You have to speak up, or there you go. Okay, now we will move on to authorization of signature forms, and basically you have to vote on just the signature forms. Do I have a motion to authorize the signature forms for the upcoming year?
So moved.
Moved by John, seconded by Earl. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Item E is our regular board meetings. I think we want to have a little discussion on this, right, Pam? Do you have any of
There's
them?
a couple of items we wanted to
April,
clarify.
let's talk about April, and basically that's the main one. I know I'm okay with all of those dates. It's right behind. So the April meeting is during spring break, which is April 14th.
Right, the question there is whether or not we have traditionally conducted a regular board meeting during spring break. I know that.
Right.
Thank you.
It's okay.
You just passed it.
That's up. Oh, God.
Okay.
Right.
Correct. We realize in the private sector that work goes on during that week, but we also wanted to acknowledge that during spring break, there are days that district offices are closed. There's not faculty or staff present. Standard reports and other items would be missing from that meeting. So the option would be to consider an alternate date, and we've given you, assuming Monday were still a preferred date, we've given you the Monday before and Monday after.
And I told Stan, I kind of like the April 7th almost better because it's a month in between meetings, so it's not like we're meeting, 2 or 3 weeks later. We do have almost a whole month in between there, and it gives us a little break between meetings before we meet with Vicetta Unified on the 28th. So if that date's acceptable to everybody, I almost like it better than the 14th.
Let me check.
So there's no dates on here from when we hold a meeting in Tulare and Hanford? We'll plug those in as one of the dates that are here?
No, actually, remember what we did this last year, Greg, and we'll do this at retreat, is we set those as separate meetings so that they didn't happen on top of our regular business agenda.
Yeah, we didn't like it. Remember when we went to Hanford, it just didn't work out to have our regular meeting in Hanford and the joint meeting. It was hard for some people to get there.
Yeah.
Hanford, we didn't do until June, and it was our meeting to adopt the budget, and we were carrying everything over to Hanford to get our budget adopted. And then, so we have a tentative date for our Hanford meeting already set, and we'll have one for the Tulare meeting, and we'll have those by retreat in January.
Whichever one you want to fix from.
Okay.
Seven.
I'm okay with this changing it to the 7th.
Okay.
So is there a way, Megan can email these, to get it, you know, how we get it on our calendar? 'Cause
Yes.
Email them out as calendar appointments, and then you can just accept them, and they'll be integrated. Okay.
That would be great.
Okay, so we're going to select April 7th.
And our board retreat date, does that work for all the board members? That's imperative that we're all there.
That's when we do it normally, isn't it?
Right, and that was set, that one should not be a new date on your calendar, but just double check.
Well, and I didn't have it in mind, so I mean, maybe because that was my fault, but I know we were talking about it being either that or the next weekend, which was the 31st or the 1st.
Right.
I like that, the 24th better. Is January 24th and 25th work for everybody? It'll be all day Friday, half a day Saturday, right?
Right.
Is that going to be in Tulare?
Yeah, that
Right.
I have a question. Am I
Sure.
supposed to attend that meeting?
Yes, we would love for you to be there. Does that work for you?
I think we should.
Yeah. Especially Friday, it would be very valuable to have you there Friday.
Okay.
Saturday, not so much. Definitely Friday.
Yeah.
Saturday's pretty much when the board meets.
We have the morning, we go until noon. Do you have classes on Friday?
No, I don't have
Okay,
one on
so that
Friday.
would work.
Typically Saturdays are closed session.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, so
I think
everybody's-
everything else aligns with our second Monday calendar.
Okay.
Any special accommodations? Remember last year we were accommodating some vacation schedules in the summer. Anything anybody wants to look at in advance?
Not in advance, I don't.
Okay.
I don't have a 90-day vacation plan.
John, yeah, I know. John, I might, I'm just letting you know, I might. If I could be gone for 90 days, something would be really wrong.
I'd like to see you put up with a 14 tomorrow for 90 days.
About one night in the front.
Yeah. So the action item before us then would be to consider approval of the schedule of regular meetings for 2014 as presented with the designation of April 7th for our April meeting.
Okay, do you have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Greg, seconded by Ken. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, calendar approved. Okay, our last item of business for the organizational meeting would be our board member committee representatives and these are appointed positions. We'll just start at the top. I thought this would have your information.
They're right
Oh, they're
there.
there.
Yeah. If you look on the last page,
There.
under number 4,
Perfect.
trustee
Okay.
appointments, what we've provided for President Cardozo is who's currently serving on those positions so that she can decide
Yeah.
along with you if any of you might like to change.
Okay, so for our board budget subcommittee, Ken and Greg, are you,
Yeah, we've met so many
Not opposed to
times
stay?
last year. and It wasn't a problem.
I think it's one of those where we need to do it again to see if we can do a better job.
okay, I appoint Mr. Nunes and Mr. Sherman to our board budget subcommittee once again. California Community College trustee, Earl. Mr. Madden, would you like to do that again?
Yes.
Okay. Our Association of Community College Trustees, Earl, are you
Yeah.
okay with that? That was easy. For our COS Foundation, Greg, would you like to hand that over to somebody?
I'd like to hand it over to Ken.
Okay, Ken, do you agree to that? Actually, I wasn't supposed to ask
I
that.
see
I
Ken
appoint
here,
Ken
front
Nunes.
row, Ken. I say no.
I'm supposed to ask for permission, I forgot, I'm supposed to appoint.
You forgot to tell Ken, the meetings are just warming up, right? They're just getting started now.
That would be an appointment, not a question. I would like to appoint Ken Nunes to the COS Foundation. Our COS Building Trades Foundation, I know that's under some restructuring. John, are you willing to serve on that? I think it'll be vital
It's
this
not-
year.
It's not going to be a foundation anymore.
It's going to move to advisory, but in the transition, there will still be a board member representative, John,
That's
so.
not private, if you wish, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And COS Ag Advisory Committee, yeah, I would like to continue to sit on that. Ken has also been attending, and he's been my backup, so Ken, as long as you agree to be my backup on that committee, I'm happy to serve there. Okay, so we are all appointed.
Mhm.
Oh, the president, okay. Do I need to read that?
Oh,
Oh, the Tulare County, Earl, would you like to sit on the Tulare County Committee on School District Organization? Because I know that takes up a lot of your time. Have you been to a meeting yet?
We've never had a meeting, they just send me the ballot, I just go.
Oh, so you do? So
Yes.
there is a job involved?
Yes.
Okay, so I would like to appoint Mr. Mann to the Tulare County Committee on School District Organization. We seem to discuss that every year just for a little bit because it's been fun. As Earl says, it takes up a lot of time. I don't know if I want to do it again. Okay, so that closes or concludes our organizational meeting. Okay, we will move on to public comment. For Board Policy 2350, any person may address the board at this time, either on an agenda item or other matters of interest to the public that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. A maximum of 5 minutes is allowed for each speaker with a maximum time of 15 minutes per item unless otherwise extended by the board. Do we have any public comments concerning items on the agenda? Seeing none, do we have any public comments concerning items not on the agenda?
I have one.
Sure.
I would very happily like to report that College Sequoias, for the first time, has had one of its productions asked to produce down at the Kennedy Center American Theater Festival, February 12th through the 15th. There were 60 productions nominated from Hawaii, Arizona, Nevada, California, Oregon, and we were one of them, and 7 productions were selected, and we were one of them. So I've been talking to Tim, and we're going to start fundraising efforts. I participated in this back when I was in college. We went over to Reno, and you take your whole production, truck it down there, your whole cast, you perform it for thousands of other theater students. And this year, again, it's in LA, 3 different theaters, so we will be going down. We're not sure which theater yet. So on January 30th and 31st, I believe are the dates we're choosing, we're going to remount the production in our theater to do a foundation type of fundraiser to get money to go down, because again, we got to rent the truck, we got to get the students, we got to train them. I mean, for us faculty, it's going to kill us because it's 3 days. We've got to totally remount lights, set everything in a new theater. So, but for the students, it's great experience.
How many
And
students do you think will get to go at this point?
This was the cast of a
Midsummer Night's Dream, and we're
Okay.
taking probably 35 kids. It's a big cast, yeah.
They
And
came in
plus,
during our fall run. In fact, the night I was there, the adjudicators were there.
right, and we
And so
just,
they ended up selecting us one of 6 out of about 70 entries.
and on Midsummer's, we actually had the regional head come in on the second week of the run because he heard the production. Our original production was so good. So we will be closing down the theater for that week in February, so you won't see any of us. We'll all be done in
But wait, we
LA.
didn't say anything about the theater.
Yeah, we'll all be there, so it's a huge festival, and so it is, as you see all the fundraisers coming up, please support us, because this is the first time COS will actually be taking in production. We have had our students nominated for the Irene Ryan Acting Awards and stuff in the past, and we have taken down 7 or 8 students for that part, but we've never taken a full production, so it's going to be a big time.
Congratulations.
How much money do you need to raise?
We're not sure yet. We're looking at probably 4,000 or 5,000.
Oh, that shouldn't be that hard.
We hope so.
Make sure you get an article in the paper and,
That's-
yeah.
Yeah, we just found out Saturday night, right before the choral
Ask
concert.
for 4,000 or 5,000 and see if you can get one person to donate it to you.
Okay,
Chris,
you give me that name.
I'll give you Greg's phone number.
he put the COS.
I'll share that contact with you right now.
Yeah, thank you.
Congratulations, Steve, thanks.
Steve, when you do the fundraiser, will you guys do like a mini production, or will it just be like a fundraiser?
We're actually gonna do the full production for 2 nights.
Oh, got it.
So we're gonna hopefully put it out to the entire public out there and say, please come and support us. All your money is going directly for the
Proceeds on
students.
these 2 nights help fund the trip.
Well, are you
Right.
gonna charge more than $20 a ticket, I hope?
We just discussed that today. We don't want to keep people away, but we're still under discussions. We'd rather see a full theater at $20 each than a half theater at
Yeah, I guess you
$50
just gotta
each.
get to that
Depending.
number you have to raise.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Can you do some of them maybe as a VIP?
Yes.
Charge $50 or something?
We talked about that today also. Yeah, we're just starting this process.
So I was on my way to SciCon with taking one of my boys, and the counselor that rode with me is a drama student at Union, and he's a senior, and he was talking about how he really likes drama. And it took me 20 minutes just to get him to say 2 words to me in the car. He was so shy. And then he tells me he's a drama student. So, naturally in my head I'm thinking, well, he must do background because he doesn't even talk.
He's a lighting director.
So I asked him, what is it that you like about drama? What is it that you do? And he goes, oh, I love being on stage.
Yeah.
But then I asked him what his plans were for college, and he said, I don't really know, but I know I want to do drama. And I said, have you considered COS? He goes, I've heard a lot of good things about it. So,
Good.
little plug there. But yeah, really quiet kid, and he said a lot, and then he proceeded to tell me a lot of actors are really shy in real life.
Yes.
But I told him, I know one, he really isn't.
He is not.
Okay. Maybe you were when you were a senior in high school, maybe.
No.
No.
He was my teacher. He remembers
Oh,
me.
that's funny. Okay, I'll roll about for that. All right, moving on to board and executive staff reports. Diana, our student trustee report.
All right, so I'll try to make it as brief as possible. So since the last time I saw you guys, we had our Halloween carnival, which went pretty well. Also, the health fair had their own fair as well, and they had an iPad that they raffled off, so they had a lot of people come. The Free Thinkers also came onto our campus. There was events held by the Democratic Club, and they had a large variety of different people come. And one of them was like, what was it, like conspiracists. So there's a couple different ones there. We had Soup Day, which is when we give out soup to students, and it's a free meal. So we served over 500 students this year, and it was hosted by the Social Work Club, and they donated all their money to Yes Club. So it's a new organization that we have on our campus, and it's to help foster youth. We also participated in the Candy Cane Parade. We were a small group, but it was still fun. A lot of people couldn't make it because it was during the break, but it was really fun still. And then in our leadership class, we just finished. This was our last meeting, was last Thursday, and we did our peer assessment and our self-assessment to see how we've improved in our leadership. We've also saw what our leadership personalities were. So I'm a blue, which means I'm like intimate, I guess. And
Which doesn't mean quiet.
yeah. And for COS, we have our board participated in the assessment for accreditation. So for us, it was, for me, it was personally a nerve-wracking experience. I know Fidel, our president, was pretty good going into it. She was really impressed by how much we knew. She didn't expect us to know that much. And really what she asked us was what we observed, like on the committees that we were on and what we see on campus that we saw that was different. So we explained that to her, and I think she was happy to see that we had examples and we were just kind of like going around the bush, like we usually do with our essays.
Unless that essay's on accreditation.
Exactly.
Or that teacher's in this room.
Then you have some concrete details.
And then she had mentioned to us how we're connecting the other campuses with ours. And that's something that we did say we have to work on. So we've been recently brainstorming to make sure that we have access to both campuses for the Hanford and Tulare. So we're trying to figure out different ways that we could possibly have it available to them if they want to attend meetings and not have to make the drive to Visalia. So that's what we're working on right now. And this is the end of the semester for us. So we get a little break and then we're back at it next semester.
Okay, well, thanks, Diana. Good report. Any questions of Diana? Okay. Any board member reports?
Yeah, Lori, I would like to say I attended the play a couple of weeks ago, The Man Who Came to Dinner.
Man Who Came to Dinner.
That was outstanding. If you missed that one, I'm surprised that isn't the one they picked, because
That's too big to go.
that was great. And then also, Dr. Lucerne and I represented COS at the Christmas tree auction Friday night.
Thank you for that.
attended the Tulare County School Boards Association meeting a couple of weeks ago, and Mary Beth, our attorney, was one of the presenters, and she presented information on gender identification, which I don't think, hopefully it will not affect us much at the college, because hopefully by the time we get here, they've decided what they are. And, but it was a very interesting workshop, and also the other one was on Obamacare. And I don't have a clue any more than I did before I went in, other than that they do not know any more than you and I on what they're doing. So it was a very interesting 2 sessions. And CSBA had a very good speaker that spoke.
Thank you for attending that. I attended Power of the Purse, I guess that was after our meeting, right? That was a lot of fun. You missed out. There were lots of nice purses they had. But I think it was a success. I know Tim's going to report on it. I was happy to look around the room and see at least, I don't know, 7, 8 tables of people from Tulare, though, specifically, and some new faces and some new people interested in foundation and those types of things. So the Tulare Foundation Committee is doing a really good job bringing in some new members and new faces that are really talking about COS. So that was really, really good to see. Any other board member reports?
Yeah.
I also had the opportunity to attend the production of The Man Who Came to Dinner, and it was a special interest to me because, oddly enough, that's the play that we did when I was a senior in high school. And I had a big part in it. But as you would have it, the fellow who played Sheridan Whiteside when I was a senior in high school came with us, and he happens to, not only was he was my college roommate, and he's my next door neighbor now. So, so that was really interesting to see, and it was great, and I thought it was just.
I hope his personality is not like that character.
It was really great.
Any other board member reports?
Yeah, Lord,
John?
First, I attended the Building Trades Foundation meeting last week, before last week, whichever. And the foundation has an asset in the form of a couple of duplexes. They were discussing selling those, or offering those for sale in order to generate revenue to take on future projects. Tim or perhaps Stan will want to talk about it more. Second thing is I'm going to defer to you a little bit, Lori, is that since the last board meeting as part of accreditation, Lori and I were asked to visit with the accreditation team. We were interviewed for an hour, and it got my attention. And I will tell the rest of you there is I felt humbled by Lori's knowledge. While I tend to be guilty, sometimes relying upon my experience, it was obvious to me, Lori, that you'd read what about all that stuff. She asked lots of questions, and I suppose for every 10 questions I knew the answer to 8 or 9 of them, but there was those others that I just drew a blank, and Lori just routed off. And, I was impressed, Lori. I think that the fact that you were the president of the board made the interview go so much better than it was some of the other things instead. So. And we'll see in February whether we blame you or congratulate you.
Uh-oh.
Wow, pressure.
So there was a second shooting.
Well, I will say a little bit like Diana, I was a little surprised by the interview, but I'm glad we were able to participate in the interview because they shared information and talked about, it kind of has made us look at, as board members, we went to the workshop that Barbara Bino put on. I think what we got, my message was that day was there are a few that we really need to be aware of in terms of the standards as board members and our role. Everybody has a role, and I think it made it clear to me But I will say, I was a little more surprised by what we got, and I think John felt the same way. But it was all good. I think we're all moving on this road, going down this road and learning new things. And I think those interviews, for me as a board member, helped me
It was all good.
really hone in.
I was amazed how blunt some of the questions were.
Very much so. There wasn't any beating around the bush, as Diana would say. There was no bush there. She wanted clear answers, and if we didn't know, that was okay too. Not that we didn't know, but if some things were maybe we weren't receiving them well, or she didn't quite get our answers, she would definitely say, no, I'm referring specifically to. So that felt good. You left there definitely knowing what she wanted you to answer. So it was all good. Any other board member comments? Moving on to we're just segueing right into accreditation. Oh no, foundation. I'm going to skip over you, Tim. I'm sorry.
You segued for me too. I appreciate it. First of all, I'd like to recognize a couple of our foundation board members that are with us this evening. Sue Ann Hillman and Josh McDonald are both here, serving and later on in the agenda, but that's just how much these folks help us out here at COS. So I want to thank you folks for the work that you do at the foundation. Last time I met with you, we were finishing up the scholarship application process. Well, we've completed an 8-week process. We had an original 7-week schedule. We gave a 1-week extension in trying to make sure that we got plenty of applications completed. Well, we did have a 23% increase in the number of applications started. We had 1,657 applications started. We did get an 11% gain on the number of applications completed as well. We have 617 completed applications as of the deadline that was last Sunday night. But that still means that we had a 37% completion rate. And so that's a problem that we're, at the foundation, are going to work through in the future to figure out how to, we got them in the door, and we got more in the door, how do we get more to complete and finish the job? It's not a hard application from our perspective, but we're going to try to figure that out. So I just want to let you know that we have plenty of successful applications from which to choose awardees as we go into the spring. We also are contemplating as a board our mini grants, and we have money to do so. The board approved a second mini grant application process to complement the district's above base budget process. So we already have that process. Above base funding can go through a screen, if you will, to have some viable projects for the above base funding that the district allocates. But certainly we expect that there will be a volume of requests that exceed the amount that the district has. So the foundation has already decided that we may apply mini grant funds to some of those possible projects. But we also know that not every project that the foundation can contemplate would necessarily fit through that above base process. So we came up with a similar process so that all types of opportunities have a chance to be considered by the foundation. So that process is in place. We also approved that the remaining foundation funds from the Porter Fieldhouse gift need not have a separate process that it's had in the past. It can just be a pot of money that can be at the discretion of the board, be chosen to draw from to fund any of the grant projects that come before it. So we have one process with 2 filters that bring the possible candidates, and then the board can choose which projects to fund from there.
And then the money that was left over from it was substantial, like 250 or something?
Yes, well, it was originally $700,000 of the $2 million gift. And through multiple project fundings that occurred in the subsequent years, we're down to about $315,000. But that $315,000 is now a pot of that. There's no particular time frame that we have to spend it or anything like that. But the board felt like there was no particular reason to continue to fund projects through any separate process. We have 2 well-established processes now that we can utilize. So that's about $315,000. I need to share with you that November 21st was a very good day for COS. We had the power of person. I want to thank you, Trustee Lori, for being there and supporting the event. We had 170 attendees, which is about 45 more than we had last year. We had 60 purses to auction off, and we did a great job, and we netted about $13,500 for scholarships and for textbooks in the library. And I think all the participants there understood that on their way out. They understood what the money was going to. And in fact, we did receive some unsolicited gifts from a lady who got a $65 purse, wrote a $565 check, and those types of things. But what it made extra special is the Giant Athletic Success Campaign. Your athletic director, Brent Davis, and I have crafted a campaign to raise $80,000 for the athletics program through direct solicitation of major gifts. And Trustee Sherman and a few others have helped us find possible candidates for that. Well, our first shot at doing a solicitation, thanks to Trustee Sherman, took place at the lounge side of the country club at the same exact time. And we had one person over there that we were talking to. And at the conclusion of that meeting, we had a pledge for $5,000 a year for the next 3 years. So $15,000 pledge over here. So again, it was a great day at the Visalia Country Club. And it illustrated two very different mechanisms for bringing money into COS. And for me, it illustrates which one we can have the capacity to do more of, which is the one events are great. Well, events are great, and it's absolutely necessary. In fact, the idea is that of that 170 participants, what small group within that group can we go have lunch with?
You know, let me follow up with that, because when we met with the person that, can we say who it was?
That's up to you.
Okay, well, we won't say. But he had made the comment that he had pledged $25,000 a year for 3 or 4 years with another organization, and they never came back to him again. And I almost said, well, we could sure use the $25,000. But I think there's possibility with this individual of getting more, a lot more than just the $5,000. So
Make contact.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I coached Brent on that very fact. At the end of the year, we're going to go back and ask him again, are you sure this is what you want to do it? And not just send him a bill for $5,000.
You might get a ticket to the play.
Yeah.
Ask him to go, I could do some of that.
Really exciting stuff. Also, the board was made aware of some additional resources that were coming about that both the board decided to invest in scholarships, and through some other sources, more scholarships for the 2014-2015 year was going to occur than usual. So what we did is we proposed a special one-time summer school scholarship program for the summer of 2014. We found out that the district was needing FTES for that, and all 3 campuses were going to engage in offering classes, so we wanted to put some resources towards encouraging that enrollment. So the board did allocate up to $20,000 in $200 individual scholarships to students for all 3 campuses. We piqued the interest of our former district attorney, Phil Klein, in wanting to support the foundation, and he's expressed his interest in joining the board, and I believe the board will be electing him at our February annual meeting. So Phil Klein is joining us. And then I have some upcoming events. I want to thank Trustee Zumwalt for personally supporting the Hanford Christmas tree auction for the foundation, and for attending. So thank you very much for that. And then we have the Hanford chapter meeting on Wednesday, January 8th, the Visalia chapter on Tuesday, January 21st, the Tulare chapter on Wednesday, January 22nd, and executive committee Tuesday, the January 28th. I did not have anything on the Building and Trades Foundation, Trustee Zumwalt. I was waiting to see what was going to happen with this transaction, but probably by the January meeting, we would have a report of that. We probably have those properties perhaps in escrow.
I think it's just enough to talk about the fact that they have decided to market the duplexes in order to have a nest egg to be able to do a project.
Yes, sir. And before that, though, pay the district off for the money owed for the construction of those duplexes. So that, first things first. If it's on record. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Foster? Thank you. Dr. Lacerna? Enjoy your days off? I know you did.
Well, we had Thanksgiving at my house, so, you know,
But at least you're working on the medication report for a couple days.
for a couple days, but, you know, ask Dr. Trimble, we are already, and Dr. Ostrich, we're already meeting again and starting the next draft, so we haven't even taken a breath yet, I'm already writing the next draft, but I got to go to a Christmas tree auction in the middle with Trustee Sherman, and I decided I was gonna buy a Christmas tree, and the one I wanted went for $60,000, so I didn't buy it, but I was just thinking.
Why didn't you get that one?
I was thinking, next year there should be a COS tree up there, there's a good fundraiser for us, so that was really nice.
this Thursday in Hanford.
Oh, there you go, yeah, at $60,000.
They did raise $174,000.
Well, that tree was almost in a third of it. Good. That's great. It must have been pretty.
Yeah, it was, well, it was, they did a lot of the fundraising in advance.
Mission,
It was-
what is it called? Rescue
The
Mission.
rescue mission, yeah. But they do a lot of their fundraising in advance. But it was nice because Glenn Morris was one of the people in charge of it, and I got to talk to him for a while. He was on our accreditation advisory committee, so it was good to
He's ahead of the
transition. Yeah, yeah, and so it was great, so really good event. So accreditation, that was a couple weeks ago. And one of the things I want to say, I think the pre-work was as probably as much work as during the visit. And so on the Monday holiday, Stan and Brent and I were in the office because each of the members of the board sent, of the visiting team sent a list of who they want to visit. So we have this giant crossword puzzle basically on the board, trying to figure out how to fit everybody in and not overlap people. And you know, people like Dr. Trimble were in meetings from 8 a.m. until 6 p.m. pretty much. And so it was very complex trying to get that all together. And we got the last visiting team request Tuesday morning, and we're adding those. And then I sent out emails Tuesday. And out of all of the visits we had, I made one error with the wrong time. And of course, it was to Costa. And I apologize again, Lisa, because of all groups that I got the wrong time. It was Costa, and I felt really bad about that. But it was a lot, very complex and a lot of work. So when the team was here, they met with our students, they met with the board members, they met with our academic senate, our classified executive board. They met with, as I mentioned, Costa, with our institutional planning and effectiveness committee, our program review committee, our research office, our library. They visited Tulare, they met with our Hanford provost, they met with district governance senate. So it was a lot of meetings and a lot of work, and they did that all in one day. And then they spent the next day doing their report. So the feedback that we've gotten thus far is that it went really well. We received commendations from the chair on the quality of the report as well as the ease of accessing the evidence. And they said from last time, their last visit to this visit, they could just see the change in the last time they came here almost a little bit frustrated because they couldn't access our information and the report was not as well organized as they had hoped, and this time they could just a complete difference. They arrived here very happy, feeling very confident that they were able to access everything that they needed. So we were happy to get those commendations on the report as well as the evidence that we provided. The question that seemed to be common among all of the meetings was basically what are you going to do to finish the cycle? How are you going to sustain this? That was the question throughout. We gave them the evidence, we showed them all of the work that we had done, and so the thing that they're waiting to see is how are we going to finish that cycle? Can we finish? What happens in a year? Can we complete the cycle? And how are we going to sustain it? So that was a common question throughout, and so the summary is that they felt that we've done an incredible amount of work. They could not believe the amount of work that we have completed in 8 months. And I know that it has worn on all of us, from the board members to the faculty to the students to the staff, that we've all worked extremely hard. And I want to commend everybody on that. And it was evident to the team. And now it's just making sure that we were going to complete the cycle. And so we would expect that in our next report that we have due is that's what it's going to be focused on, is our ability to sustain all of the change that we have made in a short 8 months. We, as I mentioned, our editing team has already started meeting to start writing the next report. And we do expect the report back from the visiting team next week. And then Dr. Trimble, Superintendent Carasosa, President Lori Cardoza, and I will be meeting with the commission on January 9th. That's a Thursday, the day prior to our convocation. We will be able to go in front of the commission, and Superintendent Carasosa will have a 5-minute presentation, and then they will be able to ask us some questions. And so that will happen on January 9th. So I think we're all feeling really good about how the visit went, and had really good positive feedback. One example I would give is that they've asked, a lot of the visiting team members asked us for documents that we had. Oh, can we borrow that? Can we use that? Can we have that? Different presentations, some of the research work that had been done. And they loved the 19 days of accreditation. They all wanted to take that back and copy that at their respective institutes. And I'll just give one personal example for myself. With the Institutional Planning and Effectiveness Committee, our group met with them, and I co-chaired that with Jeff Basham, the Vice President of Academic Senate. And we had a good meeting with them. I tried to stay as quiet as possible so the faculty and staff could answer the questions, and it went really well. And the next day we had our actual meeting, and after the meeting, our Institutional Planning and Effectiveness Committee meeting, one of the faculty members was walking with me, and she said, last year at this time when me, as new vice president, had walked into that meeting and said, okay, what do we do in this group? They all looked at me and said, we were hoping you knew what this group does. They didn't know how to answer that question. She said, now a year later, we're coming out of these meetings with a timeline, with a job, and with a goal and a task to accomplish by the end of the year. We know what our role is. And so to me, that was the day after the visit, and that was everything coming together. So it felt really good, and I think I'm very confident in where we are heading.
That was your evidence you needed, huh?
Yeah,
All that
exactly.
evidence, right?
Exactly.
Good job, Jennifer. Any questions on accreditation? Comments?
Jennifer, just, what is it that you expect to hear back from the committee next week?
We will get their report. Their written report should come 30 days after the visit, and so we should get it next week sometime. The report will be what all of their write-up and their recommendations. That goes to the commission, and so we won't know what the commission's vote's going to be. We'll just know what the recommendations from the visiting team are.
That will give us some indications what they're thinking.
Absolutely.
Although last year,
That's true, and that's one of the things the chair was really clear with Stan and I, or Superintendent Carasosa and I, is that it's their report, it's what they found, and they don't have any say about how the commission votes. So, they don't want to say, oh, this is what we think is going to happen. They can't tell us that because it depends on that commission meeting that day.
any other questions? Thank you, Dr.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just add a little bit to the topic of accreditation, since that's what we just finished hearing our report on, and add, just since it's the first board meeting since we had the accreditation visit, just my thank yous and appreciation to all of you, staff, of course, and faculty and students who worked on it, but board members, even though John and Lori were here, so they had firsthand experiences. But I appreciated the others of you emailing me, calling me, asking for those updates. Earl came by me when we were sitting down and visiting and saying, fill me and tell me how it went. So you made it easy for me to connect with you because you knew we were busy, and I wanted to thank you for that. When I think about that whole accreditation experience and what we went through, I would echo what all of the folks have shared so far. And I know some of you will giggle at this because you've heard this story a lot, but I'm going to share it one more time and probably one more after this. Because we do get to speak to the commission on January the 9th. But one of the telling moments for me in the whole process was near the end of that first day when all of the visiting team members had been meeting with one group after another, and they had the subgroup together who had written, from the response task force, who had written the portions of our governance manual, and was responsible for responding to all of those recommendations we had on governance and how we were going to structure ourselves. how we were going to make decisions and plan and follow through. And when Jennifer mentioned earlier that the big deal for them, their second round and third round of questioning all day long had to do with follow through and sustainability. How are we going to feel comfortable as a visiting team? Because we've been to COS before. Two of the team members who were here actually came in 2006, came for the visit in 2012, and were back for a third time in the show cause review. So they were not unfamiliar with us, but they wanted to be sure that this time they could see and feel something different about sustainability. And so I don't know if you remember this, Dr. Trimble, but Thea and Steve Natoli and I were the last 3 committee members in this meeting on the subgroup that had written the governance manual. And our interviewer asked, she made a point of looking at the faculty members in the room and gesturing to me, I don't want an administrator to answer this, I'm directing this question at the 2 of you. And she said to the faculty members, whose responsibility is it going to be to make sure that these structures work? Whose responsibility is it to make sure that this is successful going forward and that it doesn't revert back? Dr. Trimble took a big sigh. And then she said the words I remember for the rest of my life. She said, it's all of our responsibility. It's not any one person. The fact that this thing was built through a collaborative process now empowers all of us to make sure that this continues to work. Kind of like Toyota at the assembly line when they're going for quality improvement. Any factory worker along the line can stop the assembly if it's not working correctly. And because we have everything in place now for everybody to know how it should work, all of us are empowered to hold it accountable. She could have taken the easy route and said, well, the manual says the president or the district governance senate, because that's what it says. But in reality, she said, it's going to be all of our responsibility. And I think that's the first time, and you'll all know the interviewer I'm talking about, she's the same one that interviewed you board members, that I saw her crack a smile all day. And so that's what I'm looking forward to in terms of sharing kind of our story. As Jennifer said, my next item is I recently attended the Community College League of California annual conference for CEOs. We were all there. I was in the room with 100 and I think there were 107 out of the 112 presidents or superintendents there, and we had an opportunity to meet and conference and get updated. The Chancellor's office spoke. The State Budget Analyst Office was there. Several workshops on accreditation. And if your ears were burning, it's because COS is, and this is a good thing, COS is kind of the topic of conversation now in the accreditation world. A year ago, it was because we were one of 2 colleges on show cause. This time around, it's because people have heard a lot about what we've done. And I guess from the presenters who have come here, Dr. Conrad, Dr. Pacheco, Dr. Bino, Dr. Clifford, they're sharing our story out there from having dropped in on our process over the last 9 months. And it's a positive story that others are asking us a lot about. So we feel really good about that. And on top of all that, it was a really informative conference that's given us a lot of information that will feed into convocation when we come back together here on January the 10th. To elaborate just a little bit on what John mentioned earlier, the Building Industry Trades Foundation did recently meet. You know that we have the duplexes that were the result of our building and trades class, our construction class. Tim Foster mentioned that we did have to underwrite some of the construction of that. The foundation has been the owner and landlord for those to be rental properties. They're now on the market. We have a realtor actively marketing them for sale. We have the first official offer on them, and that offer is being considered by the Trades Foundation Board. If accepted, that offer would allow us to pay back the college the loan and, as John mentioned, secure a fund balance, a nest egg for the future of the building and trades construction class and program. Dr. Waldner was there as a part of that meeting. She understands where that's been and is very excited about the possibility for where that might go. We also see the need in the near future to be able to dissolve what's a Building Industry Trades Foundation, because they were operating under their own separate kind of 503C entity and nonprofit structure, and allow them to become an advisory committee, again, to the program, and allow their account to be housed under the College of the Sequoias Foundation as a restricted account, just like many others are that are there. So for me, it's simplifying our mousetrap one level further, making it easier, cleaner, more accountable, and more transparent. And then along those same lines, just to give you an example of COS 2.0 in real operation again, District Governance Senate along with Academic Senate and Student Senate are holding our regular meetings. When we adopted our calendar last year for those regular governance meetings, we made a point of holding 2 of our meetings over the course of this year, one in Hanford, one at Tulare. So the entire Governance Senate goes to those locations and conducts our meeting there. That's coming up tomorrow. Tomorrow's meeting will be our District Governance Senate meeting in Hanford. And so at least once a year, and then in January we'll be in Tulare. So we're consciously making an effort to take governance to our campuses and make sure that faculty on those campuses, staff and students know that that's happening and have the opportunity to observe the process and in a small way start to connect to it. I think that's it.
That's it. Okay, thank you. Any questions? Board members? Okay, we will move on to reports. Academic Senate, Dr. Trimble.
Good evening. Just a couple weeks ago, 3 of us attended the State Academic Senate plenary session in Irvine. It was really very informative. They had a lot of good breakout sessions. As you might imagine, one of the most talked about issues was City College of San Francisco. The majority of the resolutions that came forward were related to accreditation. It went on for quite some time because there was multiple amendments to the resolutions. And they were way over time by the time we left at noon. They were supposed to have finished at 11 and they were still going. One thing that has come up that I'd like to share with the board, and that's a concern that the Academic Senate has. As you know, we are responsible for what's called the 10+1 issues, and we have a formal board policy related to that. And one of the things that's happened is that there are things that have ended up going to District Governance Senate that really probably should not have. And that it's really between the Academic Senate and the board. And I'm speaking about AP 4237, which came forward last time. It was the AP on the articulation agreement and giving credit for by exam. The Academic Senate had reviewed it, made a few changes, and approved it. Then it went to District Governance Senate, which changed it back and then sent it to the board. That should not have gone to District Governance Senate. And it's one of the things we need to be aware of, that just because it's a board policy or AP doesn't mean that it necessarily goes to District Governance Senate. One of the issues also becomes, and we're going to be taking that up in Implementation Task Force, is it's like in any legislative procedure, who sees it first and who sees it last. You know, we don't have a conference committee. So if something comes to Academic Senate first and we make changes and then it goes to District Governance and they make changes, does it come back for us to make more? I mean, how long do you ping pong it back and forth? And at what point do you say, you know, we have to somehow come to some agreement so that it can come to the board? Those are things that we're going to have to investigate, and we're going to have to see how we can move things forward in a timely manner, but yet still follow our procedures. One of the things that I am proposing is that next semester we're going to request training from the State Academic Senate on the 10+1. I think the Academic Senate itself needs some training on that. What is our purview and what is not? There are times with what we do that it overlaps with negotiated items. There's times that it overlaps with District Governance Senate, but there's times that it doesn't. And I think the faculty need to understand those delineations as well as everyone else. Hopefully, once we get a date, I've invited District Governance Senate to participate. the union executive boards to participate, and I'm hoping that maybe we can get the board, some board members to participate when we have a date. But I think it'd be good for all of us.
I would love to be there. Any questions of Dr. Trimble?
Yes. Do I correctly interpret the tone of your presentation as you're informing us about the discussions that are going on to resolve this, as opposed to you're not asking us to weigh in?
No,
Good.
no.
I
No, I'm saying there's an issue.
agree.
I'm making you aware of the issue. And one of the ways I have to try and hopefully alleviate that is to get us all some more training on what would be a good way to do this, plus to start the discussion of how is it when you have two senates that you come to a resolution about which one's recommendation goes forward if they don't agree.
Makes sense. Going phase, I guess.
Exactly.
We actually, Thea and I had traded a couple of emails on this, so everything's on the up and up, John, we're talking about it. The administrative procedure that came forward, I think if there was any confusion, it's that it was an AP and not the BP. And the wording actually that she's referring to, that Academic Senate put in place, that the Governance Senate in the end didn't undo, just didn't quote accept, because most of the policies had come through District Governance Senate as the final step and then move forward. This one happened to be in the category of 10+1, but it was administrative procedure. So I think that the idea that whether it's a policy or an administrative procedure, if it's under the umbrella of 10+1, it can come to District Governance Senate, but at that point it's there as an information item.
Well, what I'm enjoying is watching you two look at each other when each of them talk, and it tells me you're going to sort it out.
We will, yeah, we will. I think we've also talked about the need for training and how best to get everybody together. I shared my concerns with the only challenge maybe with the State Academic Senate providing our training is they have a perspective. And so we just need to be aware of that. And going in and look, there's some things that still are subject to some interpretation and have been interpreted through case law since the laws were enacted.
We should always recognize that any organization
And it's possible that we would be able to get, as frequently you can get a team to come that will have representatives from the league as well as from the State Academic Senate, so that you get a couple of perspectives at the same time.
Well, it sounds like you're discussing something that's
Oh,
important, so.
Yeah, I can do that.
That would be one of the very things that.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a little glitch right there that needs to be figured out. Sorted out.
Right.
Thank you. Any other questions, Dr. Trimble? Thank you, Tia, appreciate it. Costa report. Mr. Rear. No, okay, thank you. CSEA?
I would just like to acknowledge again the Professional Association of Classified Employees and PACE Committee. I reported a couple of months back on all the workshops they had, and they've had 3 or 4 workshops plus 2 big events on campus. They were extremely well attended and all great successes, and I just, under the direction of Shelley Giles and a committee of, 15 classified employees, they've just done a great job and a great service to all of the employees of COS, and I'd like to thank the president for helping positively move this forward and acknowledging it and helping people get there.
Don Nickel did notify us via email, Lori, and he apologized for not being able to be here tonight, and he says COSAPA has no report.
Okay, on the consent calendar, all items listed on the consent calendar considered routine will be enacted by one motion. An item may be removed from the consent calendar at the request of any member of the Board of Trustees or any person in the audience considered as a separate item. Do we have any items to be removed? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Moved by Earl, seconded by Greg. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, approved. Okay, moving on to our first item of action, board policy, second reading, BP 7120, BP 7130, and BP 7150. Mr. Cardozo.
Yes, Board President Cardozo, we have all of these before you tonight, and they can be taken in one motion. They're a second reading. I didn't receive any particular follow-up or questions from any of you. We reviewed each of them the first time around in the first reading at the last board meeting. You can see what's being proposed for deletion has a line of strike through. What's being proposed for addition is in bold. And these were 3 policies specific to human resources that were that came up in the accreditation process for us to clarify. And these changes now align board policy with how these issues are referenced in our resource manual that reference personnel procedures for Calaveras Sequoias.
Any questions?
I move we approve the new board policy.
I will second.
Moved by Greg, seconded by Kent. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Okay, motion passes. Moving on to item number 10, release of all claims and indemnity agreement with Tulare Campus Dairy Facility and Panero Dairy.
Good evening. We have a release of all claims and indemnity agreement. It's regarding the Tulare Campus Dairy Facility. And to give you a little background as to what occurred, what we're seeking tonight is board approval for a possible settlement agreement to Panero Dairy, who rented the dairy facilities in Tulare, and also approving what would be a settlement agreement, which we would have signed prior to issuing any check. At this point, we do not know if this party is interested in settling. We've had some back and forth, and we just have not received their assurance. But we do know that this is the maximum that we as a district feel comfortable reimbursing. And to explain a little bit of what occurred, Panero Dairy signed an agreement to lease our facility in Tulare for 47 months, just shy of 4 years. And with the downturn in the economy, the dairy industry, they had to vacate premises after just 19 months. When he came to the dairy facility, and as part of our agreement, he put in $80,000 worth of improvements, alterations and improvements to the facility. That was part of the agreement. It was an expected cost. He ended up continuing to put in improvements, and we're not 100% sure what the motivation was behind it, but in conversation with us, it was shared that perhaps an expectation to be able to continue to stay there. And the rental per head was slightly lower, and there was some benefit to him. He ended up putting in over $256,000 of improvements, but our agreement had wording clearly stating that tenant shall make no alterations other than stated in the Appendix A to 80,000, which we'd addressed, or construct any buildings or make any other improvements without prior written consent of the landlord, and that any such improvements should become property of the landlord and remain on the premises at expiration or earlier termination of the agreement. So we found ourselves as a district with some significant improvements to the dairy facility, but we had not planned those expenditures. We had not properly bid those expenditures. There are a lot of reasons that they are not the responsibility of the district. But he is interested in seeking the full reimbursement. And in our meetings with him, we came to the conclusion that after the $256,000, the first $80,000 was what he had agreed to put in. There remained $176,000 of benefits. We said, we acknowledge that you put these in. You acknowledge that we are not in debt for them. It's not our responsibility as a district. Let's acknowledge that there was this downturn in the economy that was truly no one's fault, and we'd like to split the difference and reimburse you for $88,433. If, with your approval, we will make that formal offer to Steve Melanesio, who's representing Panero Dairy, and see if they choose to accept it. If they do not, then there would probably be some other claim, and we feel like we have a very strong standing with the agreement that was signed by all parties and approved by this board.
Does somebody lease the facility now?
Yes. We did bring it. It might have come as consent. We looked very carefully through the agreement. It's a tight agreement. This one was in a sense as well. There's just no dollars being exchanged for additional improvements or anything of that nature.
So we're seeing some benefit of his improvements.
Mm-hmm. We're not renting for any more than we were to him because of just where the industry is right now. But
Christine, just one or two questions. I did drive by the facility recently and did take note that the facility did look a lot better than it did the last time I was by there. But also for the 19 months, do we know what the total rent that he did pay for that period of time? Do we have that amount?
I do, and off the top of my head, I want to say $51,000 but I might have to go back and calculate. It wasn't extensive.
It was 51,000,
Okay.
It's about 2,500 a month or something like that.
3,200.
I might be splitting hairs here, but I want your advice. There are lawyers that will not be involved, so maybe exactly how to word that might be important. Your recommended action is, it says this, recommend the board of trustees approve of payment. Would it be better to say authorize instead of approve? Because if we approve, maybe that means you have to pay, some lawyer might say. If you say authorize, is that an improvement or is it?
I like that.
Mhm.
I
I
like
think
that a
that's a
lot.
good-
When we wrote this, we thought there was going to be a payment.
So you'd be authorized, and then you and your legal team will decide whether you want to follow through or not.
We'll offer, and if he doesn't accept, then we won't be obligated to anything.
I would like to first start out by saying I agree with the recommendation that the administration is making on behalf of this claim and indemnity agreement. I also agree with Ken. I think the facility that they did, the improvements they did make has made our facility more rentable. And the tenant that's in there now probably definitely feels that. So there's no doubt that there was work done out there. The dollar amount, I won't say to that, but definitely work was done. I would also like to say I'm going to abstain. And I will say clearly that my husband and our company have no ties to this claim whatsoever, but on occasion, because we're in farming and because we're in the same realm of work, that on occasion we cross paths with the Malinesians. And just to be clean for myself, no direct contact with this claim, but just in our general field of work that we do with excavation, and there have been times that our business has crossed, so I'm going to abstain from this one.
Christine, I have one other question.
Yes.
When I did drive by there, and that was last week or the week before, I didn't see any livestock on the premises.
Oh, I
They
did.
just moved, are they there and I just did?
They were there last week.
Yeah, we moved in 200 jerseys.
Just recently, Larry? or- Okay,
Yeah,
so it must
about
have been-
a week and a half ago.
That was
Well,
out
I
there.
think I went before Thanksgiving, so
They're not black and white, so they're harder to see.
They're
out
kinda
there.
small.
They're a little smaller, so that's probably why you missed them.
I was out there last week for 4-H in the shop, the kids meet there in the shop with Carlos, and I did notice that they were there and the place looks nice and clean and neat. I did drive by while the kids were working on their lawnmowers. Okay, so I'll turn the meeting over to you, John.
Okay, thank you. Is there any more discussion on this item?
I would make a motion to approve the settlement agreement with the rewording as proposed by Mr. Zane.
Substitute the word authorized for, substitute authorized for approval. First or second? Second. Is there any further discussion? Is this a roll call or not?
No, just a voice vote.
All
John?
those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Aye.
4, 0, and 1. And with that, I'd like to make one more comment. You know, the fact that this is even on the agenda should tell us that business is business, and we need to perhaps be cognizant of that when we're dealing with contractual issues. I know you all feel that way. I look forward to never seeing anything like this on the agenda. Lori, it's all yours.
Okay. Thank you, John. We'll move on to item number 11, which is our Tulare General Obligation Bond Measure J, Citizens Oversight Committee, our 2012-13 activity report. Ms. Stanton and Ms. Hillman.
Okay, I'm going to introduce Sue Ann Coleman, who is a member of our Measure J Tulare Committee, and she is also in a college support organization with our foundation, and she's going to present the 2012-13 activity report.
This will be very brief. Just a little history on the Circle J, the Measure J Oversight Committee. The purpose of the committee is to inform the public concerning the expenditure of bond revenues. The committee is charged with actively reviewing appropriate reporting on the proper expenditure of taxpayers' money for school construction. There are 13 members on the committee, and we met 3 times. I think that our meetings are kind of winding down because the Tulare campus is 99% complete. And as of November 19th, 2013, the Citizens Oversight Committee finds that the bond revenues were expended only on the specific projects approved by the voters and that no funds were used for any teacher or administrative salaries or other school operating expenditures. So if there are no questions, then we recommend that you approve or accept this report.
Ms. Brown, thank you for serving. Committee, thank you for being here tonight. Do you have any questions of Ms. Hillman? Oh, you got off easy.
Move we accept the report.
Okay.
I'll second.
Moved by Earl, seconded by Ken. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, we'll move on to item number 12, our signage and all obligations.
Okay, and we have Josh McDonald, who's the chair of our Mid-Rye Citizens Oversight Committee. And something I wanted to point out, there are members listed in the activity report. These are the members from 2012-13. We've actually had quite a change. Josh and Sue Ann are two of the ones that are continuing, which is nice.
Madam President, members of the board, ditto. I was going to say top hat, Josh.
I thought I saw you walk down with Suanna, I'm like, he's not done. That was one vote. You need to give your report.
In 2008, the city of Visalia and some surrounding areas adopted Measure I, $28 million bond, and this past year, the remainder of the monies, or almost the remainder of the monies, there's still a little bit left in the pot, but really very little, were spent, let me say this correctly, the bond revenues were expended on the specific projects approved by the voters and no funds were used for any teacher or administrative salaries or other school operating expenses. And just editorially, I believe that Measure I is a shining example of exactly how the voters would anticipate that bond monies were to be utilized on some really excellent projects. I'm very proud to be a part of the process.
Thank you for serving. Ms. Donald, do you have any further questions? Can I get a motion?
I'll move that we approve the oversight committee on Measure I.
Second.
Moved by Greg, seconded by John. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Thanks for your service. Item number 13, our agreement with the Community College League of California for solar consulting services.
Thank you. For several years now, we've been evaluating, researching solar for the district and just trying to make it both cost effective and find the right place. I've met with many of you individually on the topic, and we've recently worked with the League, Community College League, and their consultant on solar. He's done a lot of projects throughout the system, and we felt it was worth working with him to ensure, again, that it would be cost effective. Because I've always been the biggest skeptic. And he convinced me through his analyses that it was cost effective, enough for me to take it to my supervisors, and we've had some discussions. We feel at this time that it's worth taking the next step. We're not saying that we're ready to have solar on this campus. We are saying that one of the things that helped it really pencil out is that there is through Proposition 39, there's a 0% loan program now, and we need this consultant's help in filling out some of the documents and engineering, which they will do for free if we have the agreement with them. If we enter into agreement long-term with the solar contractor, this consultant firm gets their money from the contractor, so the district would never exchange any money with the consulting firm, nor are we obligated to enter into a solar agreement. So if we end up at the end of the day not doing solar, we won't owe any money to the consultant. We wanted to discuss this with you, not only for the agreement, but really the topic of solar, because, you know, as we've seen a lot of folks doing it now, some for different reasons. We've always wanted to make sure it was cost effective in addition to doing what's right for the environment. So there are three analyses at the back of the agreement for your review. At the top, they delineate each other with a 0% loan a 4.5% interest loan and a 5% loan. Because folks are lining up quickly for the limited money at the Prop 39. It may not be there by the time we come back to you in January for approval of the documents, which you do have to approve. But we wanted to at least show you what we're looking at. And they are really specific analyses. They are conservative. More conservative than anybody I've ever seen. So I honestly think that they would be bigger than this, but we wanted to make sure that it penciled out. So Christine and I have been meeting with the consultant. Concept-wise, we are looking at parking lot 7, which is the big lot south of the tennis courts, the one where we've taken out the row of houses, but the entire lot, enough to where one of the bigger vendors has driven through. We've dug in to see what trees could not be removed, because it would, that concept, if it was developed, we would have to remove a significant amount of trees. We would not remove any of the oak trees. There is enough room, according to the consultants, to get a 1 megawatt system. That's our sweet spot from a financing standpoint, if we end up with solar out there. If approved, next month what we'll be doing is coming back to you with approval of the resolution to get in line for the loan, which is also not a commitment to accept the loan, but as John mentioned in the last item, authorizing us to accept it should it materialize, in addition to a CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, approval that it would be a notice of exemption, because we would not be disturbing any statutory required trees or native trees over 25 years old, which I've had a biologist walk with us through our environmental firm to validate that statement. So for tonight, what we're asking is that you will authorize us to enter into the solar consultant agreement through the California Community College League.
I have a question, Laura. So they use that south parking lot. How many parking places will we lose, or will we lose any?
We haven't got that far yet, Greg. The estimate, we might lose a handful where the inverters would go. A handful, 5 or 10. But the carports, they would be carports, so we'd be providing shade. And it wouldn't necessarily be all of the lot. There's one quadrant that is not really conducive because of the trees that were there, and the roads run differently. But we honestly are in the concept phase, and we haven't developed all of it out. But in the concept phase, it was not a significant amount, 5 to 10.
Yeah, I've never seen that parking lot full, right?
It's full, first few weeks of school and fall semester, but certainly, and it's you know, it's a 1,400 stall parking lot.
Right.
We're not talking about any significant reduction in parking.
Yes, John.
Talk about the economics. You know, the only reason solar pencils at all is because the state of California has mandated utility companies derive 30% of their total power from renewable sources, and hydro doesn't count. In the process of looking at the economics of this, please also look at what the state is imposing on the utility companies and for what period of time, so that we run no risk of not contractually getting all of the money back. In other words, to the degree that getting paid back relies on some amount of speculation, when you come back, I want to know what that is.
And that is here also, it's the assumed utility account rate of cost escalation. The consultant recommended 3.5% as a 25-year average. We pushed him down
Where I'm
even
going
more.
is make sure that the state law period of time is such that the utility companies will be contractually obligated during the whole period.
To acquire power.
To the degree you're assuming things get renewed, I want to know that when you come back.
Yeah, because we've looked at renewable digesters, just dairy-wise, we've run through 3 or 4 different companies, and what I found is, and I'm not at all trying to say anything about this consulting company, but they're looking at it from one perspective. They're looking at it from, right now, if I can write this, what can I do? So I'm always leery of a consulting company that knows how to write the contracts for you. They're going to be on their way. They're not tied to this in any way. So I'm leery of it right away, just because it's a consultant. I mean, if we need to hire somebody to figure it out for us, then I'm nervous. You know, that always makes me leery. I may be the only one, but I don't like a consultant to have to fill anything out for me, because that means there's something in there I may not understand.
With their engineering calculations as far as this grant money, now we wouldn't need that if we weren't going to go for the 0% grant. we could just go with a traditional 5% loan, but that's a difference of $2 million in payback. So we were trying to take advantage of the opportunity of 0% financing, which requires engineering calculations. I could hire also an engineer, but I'm trying to have $0 to COS right now. So this is free.
Well, what I want you to come back with, I know you'll take care of that part of it. But if one of these come back with a recommendation for us to do it, I want to hear what part of it is irrevocable as far as getting money back, and what part's speculation. I just want to know that when you come back.
And when we would, I thought you were moving forward.
You know, those first 5 years, that work, if you look at any of these three, that assumes a fairly large payment from the California Solar Program. That would have to be irrevocable because that's what makes this possible. And then the other assumptions, we can talk further, but I pretty much agree with Eric and the consultant because like, we kept ratcheting it down. I've seen a number of these at other districts, and these are about as conservative assumptions. as
After
we
the
see.
bond consultant we had, Larry, that's where we're coming from.
Now, and maybe I can help clarify this, John.
You don't need to do today, when you come back with a recommendation.
When we come back, it will be with a RFP process that went through and a contract that is good for 25 years with guaranteed amounts. This is just an analysis of that contract.
Well, I know I'm talking ahead of myself, but I didn't want to catch you flat-footed next time you come back.
Okay, any further questions? Do I have a motion to approve item number 13?
I so move.
Second.
Moved by Ken, seconded by John, for further discussion. All in favor, say aye. Motion approved. Okay, last item. I'm losing them. Item number 14. Mr. Brash, our approved settlement agreement between the district and the district attorney.
Yes, as the board is aware,
Well, second to the last, that's right.
last November of 2012, we imposed a cap on full-time faculty members, management personnel, and confidential personnel. 5 days after the imposition of the cap, one of our longtime faculty members, Jeff Bilden, announced he was going to retire at the end of the semester. Jeff Bilden did indeed retire December 17th and maintained his health coverage at CBT with plan number 1. A couple of months after he retired, Mr. Bilden received a bill in the mail which came to light that the cost for a retiree to have plan 1 under CBT was significantly more than it was for an active employee to be on plan number 1. There's a $1,200 difference against the retiree. In other words, retiree had to pay $2,500 a month to be on plan number 1 versus about $1,300 a month for an active employee to remain on plan 1 with CBT. With that significant increase, Mr. Bilden approached the district and tried to reach some kind of agreement to get Mr. Bilden out of the retiree health insurance with CBT. District got some legal advice from our attorney, Mary Beth Bugatti, and it was determined that given the close proximity between the imposition of the cap and the announcement of Mr. Bilden's retirement, it was in our best interest to reach an agreement with Mr. Bilden. What you have in front of you is a proposed settlement agreement between the district and Mr. Bilden. Some of the highlights of this agreement are that with the board's approval, Mr. Bilden would forfeit his medical coverage, his vision coverage, and his dental coverage. In return, the district would pay Mr. Bilden the equivalent of what it would cost if the equivalent in health insurance costs up to the cap, which was $13,330. We would pay that until Mr. Bilden reaches the age of 65, which is in November of 2017. So what I'm here to you before tonight is for formal approval of this settlement agreement between the district and Mr. Bilden.
Any questions? Oh, okay. Any question, any further questions for Mr. Brash? Seeing none?
He's agreed to accept this.
We've been working with him, and the main concern that he had, Greg, was that, not that he be entitled to more than what the newly approved cap premium amount is, but that he be able to take that premium amount and shop the exchange for more cost-effective insurance than what the CBT rate is for him as a retiree to get the plan he was on when he was active. One of the things we've learned in this whole process is that CBT has an accelerated rate for you as a retiree in our program. One of the reasons we want to look for alternatives to insurance in the coming year.
So it's really no dollars out of our pocket.
Same amount of money, but giving him the authority to take that money and not contribute it to the health insurance with the other exclusive bargaining unit representatives.
Because both the district and Mr. Billman were blindsided by the circumstance, I make a motion that we ratify the settlement agreement between Jeff and the district.
I'll second.
It's been moved by John, seconded by Greg. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
And it would be nice if what I said was in the minutes. The reason for the money.
Neither of us were aware of the escalating cost of retirement.
Okay, item number 15, Dr. Lacerna.
The curriculum report is the same topics that we've seen the last few months, 5-year review, repeatability, and matching the course identification numbers. So unless there are any questions, the district's going to request that we approve the curriculum letter.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Greg, seconded by Earl. All those in favor of adopting the curriculum, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, to everyone who stayed till the end, happy holidays, Merry Christmas. Thank you for being here. Stay warm, and we'll see you back. Happy New Year too, I guess. See you back next year.
Right.